He let go of my legs, which dropped to the ground gracelessly, and rested for a moment with his arms around my neck and his forehead propped against my shoulder. Something warm and viscous started dripping down my inner thigh, and my belly was sticky with my own cum. Damien. My thighs hurt and felt too weak to hold my weight, and I could easily have gone back to bed to sleep for a week. Yeah, I know, sorry, I'm untying, you know. When he did it, my knees gave way and I fell down. Damien pulled me up quickly, grabbing me by underneath my shoulders and then holding me tightly in his arms. Are you okay? I hope it wasn't too rough. My body and my mind were both too numb to answer, but the remains of the pleasure still lingered, so I shook my head gently with a shy smile. He laughed and ruffled my hair. You're a wreck. I'll carry you back to the school. And after we cleaned a bit and put our clothes more or less in order again, he leaned down and took me in his arms, carrying me bridal style. Oi, Damien, put me down. This is too embarrassing. But nobody can see us here, and your legs won't hold you, right? I punched his chest. I couldn't remember the last time someone carried me that way, but I bet I wasn't older than 5. Then carry me on your back, but not this way. Nah, this way funnier. In the end, he carried me the way only until we reached the fence. After that, I assured him my legs were fully recovered and I didn't need any help. It wasn't exactly true, of course, and once in a while my thighs started to tremble so much that I thought I was going to fall down again, but Demi was ready to catch me on every occasion. The only thing I could do was trying to hide my embarrassment and pray my legs would hold me when I was in front of my schoolmates. After having lunch with Rick and other classmates, Damien gestured me to follow him again. We ended up going back to the service stairs that led to the kitchen and the servants' area. What are we doing here? I don't think I can do it again this soon. Damien turned to look at me with a puzzled face, and then he realized what I meant and burst into laughter. You're so funny sometimes, little bird. No, we're here because I have a poker game in the kitchen, as I do every Sunday afternoon. So you're coming with me? To a card game? One where people actually bet money? Oi, don't count me in for that. The remains of my meager allowance were almost inexistent, so I should make them last as much as possible and reserve them for emergencies. Not to speak of what my mother would say if she heard I had wasted money on a card game. Would you shut up and listen to me? You will play, not pretend to play with my money, but that's not the point of being there. Then what is it? Besides, what if the gardener is here? Now you're talking. My plan is exposing you to your possible attackers. Look, we don't have any clue to follow, except for that man that you have recognized. Although I'm not 100% sure. True, that then on the one hand, if he's there you can take a better look at him and make sure he was the one who tried to stab you or not. And on the other hand, if your attackers are among the servants, let's rub you in their faces and make them try it again. This time we will be alert and ready to catch them red-handed. A shudder ran up my spine. I'd want to sound too much as a chicken, but want to be very risky. He placed his hand on my shoulders and leaned in for a short peck on my lips. I'm here, aren't I? I won't let anything bad happen to you. You have my word on that. I felt a knot in my throat, and the only thing I could do was shyly nod. I followed him down to the kitchen. Damien's whole demeanor changed as soon as we stepped in the kitchen. He was again the cheeky, petulant, and charming young man I saw the other evening we came here. I watched him with awe while he joked with the footman and flirted with the maids, all the while preparing the cards and explaining the betting system as one-man show. I see you're still tagging along. Was she speaking to me? It seemed so. I tried to say something to her, but in the end I only managed to shudder something without making any sense. She chuckled and shook her head. Well, I'm happy to see Damien is making friends. About time. I hope you're a good influence on him. I didn't like the way her eyes seemed to read through my mind, and I surely blushed awkward. What are you embarrassed of? She frowned at my reaction. I turned, looking for help, and Damien's eyes met mine, and he came closer to push me casually to the other side of the long table. You gotta sit there, Alex. Leave the girls and the forked tongues, they're too dangerous for you. And he stuck his tongue out to Connie, who pretended to be offended. Once the game started, the woman left, and only a bunch of servants and 2 teachers stayed in the kitchen. It was the servants' half-day off anyway, so many of them took the chance to go downtown. The teachers were surprised to see me there, but as I was new in the school, I hadn't met them before. They seemed reassured when Damien told them I was a senior student in his class. I'm sure they would have complained if I was younger. I sat in silence beside Damien and tried not to sweat out of nerves when he served me my cards, and I went through the game rules in my mind. I did well in the first round, but screwed up in the second. Damien cast me an annoyed look, but I was glad I was out of the game for the rest of the first hand. That way I could focus on the people around me. Apart from Damien and the 2 teachers, there was Max, who I already knew, and 3 other servants I hadn't met before. I tried to catch their names to ask Damien about them later. One of them was a guy slightly older than us, perhaps 18 years old, with curly blonde hair and an unkempt beard. His name was Shaq, and he seemed like a cheerful guy telling bad taste jokes when he wasn't fully focused on a game. Andrew was another one, in his 40s, chain-smoking, with multiple cuts scattered on his hands. I wondered what his work was in the school. And the third one was old Billy. Surprisingly, he was a footman. All the other footmen were teenagers, but that old Billy, or Billy Boy as he was also known, was an old man for more than 60. He had a youthful face and a eternal sweet smile, so I suppose that was the origin of his nickname. After a while, his lack of wit also explained why he was working as a footman. He wasn't fit for any other task. That left him out of our list to suspect, I guess, but one could never know. The second hand started, and I tried to focus again on the game. A small group of onlookers had gathered around the table as the game went by, and I almost gasped when I raised my eyes from the cards and saw the gardener looking directly at me. I shared a pointed look with Damien and hid my face behind my cards, nervous. I tried to watch the man with attention. Every time I was more and more sure that he was my attacker. By the end of the hand, I was uneasy. What if some of the bystanders were also involved? What if they were already planning on another attempt at hurting me? Or murdering me? I almost jumped when I felt a hand on my shoulder. Damien winked at me and left his arm around me as if it was a casual display of affection from a friend. Nobody said anything or seemed to find it strange, so with the third hand someone disturbed. Shot glasses and a bottle filled with a brownish liquor started to pass around the players and the viewers alike. Damien poured a glass from me and pushed it in my direction. My eyes darted to the 2 teachers, but they were busy chattering and drinking themselves and didn't pay me any attention. I sipped it. It was so strong that my eyes watered. Damien laughed heartily and patted my back. Although the taste was awful, I did it works. It started to feel more at ease and less conscious of the foreign eyes studying me. The game finished when Mrs. Hutchinson entered the kitchen yelling, "Everybody out of my kitchen, now! The time to cook dinner, so everyone who is not involved in cooking, get out right now and take an apron to start peeling potatoes." Some of the players hissed in annoyance, but nobody dared to complain. We all hurried to put the chairs in their right place and tidy up the table. Mrs. Hutchinson pinched Damien's cheek when he passed by her side. "You rascal! When are you going to start behaving as the nobleman you're supposed to be, young sir?" "Ouch! Let me go!" "And you even let your young friend drink. What a disgrace!" I sniffed my own breath. It stank of alcohol. Disgusting. "He needs to grow up a bit, Mrs. Hutchinson. Let me play a bit with him." The woman looked at me through squinted eyes, and I tried to offer her my most innocent smile. In the end, she just shook her head. "You're impossible. If I wasn't as fond of you as I as I am, I will kick you out of my kitchen and never allow you to come back. But you love me too much to do that. What would happen to our sweet love story? What a gloomy end. The woman chickled as a teenager would. Stop it already. Go back with your friend and wash that mess, for God's sake. And then she turned towards me and added, And you better not let him drag you to his wicked mischiefs. He's been lucky enough all these years to get away with it, but you might not be so fortunate. I nodded. Too late for that warning. My head hurt, my thighs hurt, my bum felt too sensitive, and I was dizzy. Definitely too late. Damien said goodbye to everybody, put his cars and money away neatly inside his pockets, and took my hand to leave the kitchen. Once in the school corridors, I approached an open window and breathed the cool air deeply. Little by little, my head started to feel clearer. What a relief. All those faces and voices still danced in front of my eyes, though I guess that even that small amount of alcohol had an effect on me. I jiggled, shaking my head. Damien was right. I was like a little bird still in its cozy nest. Hey, are you alright? I nodded. He leaned on the ledge of the window by my side, allowing the afternoon breeze to softly hit his face. How is it that you act so different when you are with Mrs. Hutchinson, Connie, and the other servants? Do I? Yes, you look at home. Comfortable. Are you acting when you are with them or when you are with us? Acting, huh? Perhaps you're more observant than I give you credit for. He let his eyes wander by the front garden, already in shadows. You know, always, since I can remember, the place I feel more at home are the kitchens. When I was a kid, I used to run away from the study to hide in our kitchen. My tutor always chased me around the house, red with anger, until the cooks covered up for me. They barred him the entrance to the kitchen and let me stay and help them or play there. I guess when I arrived to St. Michael's, it was a die-hard habit of mine, so I kept doing it here. Mrs. Hutchinson used to feed me sweets in my first year, so you can imagine, of course I kept coming back. And who was the girl that she mentioned the other day? Lisa? He turned to look at me and raised an eyebrow. We were so close in the window, still that our arms were pressing against each other. You, Julius? She was a kitchen helper who used to work in school. 2 years ago, when I was 14, she took me to her room and let me sleep with her. I opened my mouth but couldn't find any fitting word. Watching me closely, he chuckled and whispered in my ear. She was 19 by then, and really pretty, with long blonde hair. I wished you had met her. Really, really into it. She was. And she left the school? Damien shrugged, but his eyes got lost again in the shadows. She got married at the beginning of the last term, so she left. Now she owns a tavern downtown and is expecting her first child, I heard. So you got Rachel. Rachel is not as funny as Lisa. He turned again towards me and smirked. Or as you. I was suddenly aware of how close we were, and that we were in a corridor and not in a private place. We should go back to our bedroom and meet the others, don't you think? And I started walking, putting a bit of distance between us. During dinner, I told Monty and Rick about the suspicious gardener. Then, are you sure he was the one who tried to stab you? If so, let's go to the head teacher's room right now. Rick hummed thoughtful while playing with his fork. Actually, there's not much that we can do without clear evidence. The head teachers won't bring that man to justice just like that. Why the hell not? He's a murderer. He's an employee in St. Michael's. Can you imagine the public reaction when it hits the newspapers that an employee has tried to murder one of the pupils? I bit my lip. I hadn't thought of that. All the time, my hesitance was because of the fact that there was still a slight chance of the man being innocent, and I didn't want to cause trouble for someone who didn't deserve it. I didn't consider the school's point of view. Or the families would take the sons out of the school. Rick nodded, and Monty opened his eyes wide in surprise. He hadn't considered that option either. But this is St. Michael's. Aren't the new servants asked for reference letters? Rick waved his hand, dismissing the idea. reference letters can be forged. Meanwhile, Damien looked thoroughly bored, leaving all the explanation to me. He was leaning back in his chair and spacing out, back to his usual self. Then what can we do? Because we can't leave it like that. What if they try to attack you again, Alex? Well, at least we will be expecting the attack now, and I have seen the face of another of the new employees, right, Damien? Before dinner, he had told me that Andrew, one of the men in the card game, the one with the cuts in his hands, was also a new employee who arrived to the school in September like me. He did maintenance work, it seemed, and has currently doing repairs on the roof of the school. Do you think all the new employees are involved? How many are there? There were 5. Now that Mark is gone, there are just 4. And no, in fact, I don't think all of them are involved. I'm not even certain that the gardener is involved. I don't know anything for sure. Sighing, I turned to look at Damien, but he kept staring at the empty space and ignoring us. You said the attacker in the woods was wearing a masquerade mask. Why don't we sneak inside the servant's room and try to find it? Wow, that's a darling idea. I had never thought precisely you wouldn't suggest something like that. I don't think I could say that, sorry. And I don't want that any of you even think of doing it either. And don't get into trouble for me, please. I don't want you to risk being expelled or something worse. We couldn't think of anything to do, and I didn't want to explain to them that Damien's plan was simply having my back until I was attacked again. It still made my blood freeze. The days that followed are blurry in my memory. I can only remember endless, boring lessons and Damien taking me with him every afternoon in search for a lonely room or corridor where he could take my body again. We did it in the laundry room, in an empty classroom, in our bedroom while our mates were in the library, in a corridor of the dreaded and dark 3rd floor. I skipped every meeting of the group study to be with him. I told myself that it was just because sex was a novelty between us, and that things would come back to normal in a few days. Well, perhaps in a few weeks. As for then, the thought of Damien's hands touching me wouldn't leave my mind during class, and as keen as I was in keeping a facade and trying to keep up with my studies. As soon as Damien called for me, I was helpless. Although I couldn't help noticing the way Rick's eyes seemed to follow me everywhere with a serious and indecipherable face. Had he guessed what was happening between Damien and me? The thought alone terrified me, but as long as Rick didn't say it loud, I could pretend I hadn't noticed he knew. A couple of Sundays later, Damien took me again to the woods to rear the school. It had been raining the whole week, so that mild, cloudy weather and the change to go out the building were a blessing for us. There hadn't been any move among my attackers, so we decided we deserved to spend the day outside and relax from the stress of the school and everything else. Autumn had settled down around us. The constant rain had shaken the woods, and the ground was covered in a thick layer of dry brown leaves that cracked under your feet. It was nice. We strolled a bit, enjoying the nature hand in hand. Damien had brought a blanket so we could lie down on the ground. We were in a part of the woods where we still could find some students playing among the trees, but nobody seemed to mind us. Then, as we were reaching the fence, chattering and jiggling, someone stepped in front of us, catching us by surprise. It was Rachel, Damien's girlfriend. I let go of his hand at once and stepped back. Rachel's face was a mask of anger, and her eyes shone with unshed tears. Whatever she wanted to talk about with Damien, I didn't think it was meant for me to listen. But when I tried to bolt and give them space, Damien grabbed my wrist and made me stay put. "What are you doing here, Rachel? Coming again uninvited, I see." "I had to see with my own eyes why you were ignoring me these past weeks. So this is why? You have replaced me with a boy?" The girl looked so furious that for a moment I was afraid she would jump over me to hit me, but Damien squeezed my wrist and didn't lose his cool. "So what?" "So what? That's all your explanation, your apology? Huge teardrops were falling down the girl's cheeks by then, and she had raised her voice to almost a yell. I prayed nobody was near enough to hear her, or we would be in trouble. Damien stepped forward, looking suddenly menacing. And why should I owe you any kind of apology, pray? Did I ever promise you anything? Because I can't recall doing so. No, but it was implied. I thought you had feelings for me. I can't help it. If you're sorry, excuse for a brain kept imagining wedding bells, but I never told you a word about love or compromise, didn't I? Rachel shook her head between sobs, gritting her teeth in anger. Damien then glanced at me and added, "This goes for you too. In case you were starting to entering any strange ideas, this is only having fun together, and when it's finished, then it's finished, alright? I don't want to hear any more useless complaints. You knew what you were signing up from the start, and I was always very careful so there weren't any consequences, right?" Rachel nodded. "Go back to town and look for another boyfriend, one who is from your same station and is seeking a wife. You just have to pretend you're a maiden, and you will be fine." He shrugged with a crooked grin, and if that solved everything, and Rachel stepped forward and slapped him. "Your heart is busted. How can you be so cruel and cold? I hate you!" And she started running across the woods, weeping, heading towards the front door of the fence, while Damien and I stood there for a moment, speechless. A knot had formed inside my stomach, clenching it hard, and I suddenly felt like crying. But Damien sighed and turned his face to stare at me. He smiled and leaned in for a short kiss. "Sorry for the distance for Zane. I should have broke up with her earlier, so this wouldn't happened, but I was too busy with you." He was grinning, so I tried to swallow my pride and offer him a weak smile. "Hey, don't let this ruin the mood, okay?" I shook my head and followed him again through the trees, led by his hand. I felt like a porcelain doll, unmoving, insensitive, ready to be broken. Some more days passed without news from the attackers. I started to think they had given up, or that perhaps it had always been just in my friends and my minds. We were imaginative teenagers after all, so we were surely making it up, and the head teacher was right, and it had been just a chance meeting with a burglar. But I still didn't feel relieved. The possibility of another attack kept nudging me from a corner of my mind, while the rest of my thoughts were plagued by a very different problem. And as much as I tried to ignore it and keep cool, a smiling face, my facade shattered when Monty grabbed my sleeve one day after class, before I could even take my books from my desk. "Alex, you're not coming to see my cricket training today either, right?" He was serious, and I understood his disappointment. I had skipped his first cricket match last Saturday too. Busy with Damien, to remember, I had promised Monty I would be there. "And you haven't joined Rick and us for the study groups as for late. Alex, what's wrong with you?" I shrugged uneasy. I didn't know what I could say in that situation. I couldn't even look him in the eye. I know Damien is helping you to investigate the servants, but you shouldn't be spending so much time with him." As I surmounted by Monty's words, Damien appeared at the threshold of our classroom. He leaned against the door and looked at me as if he was calling for me without words or gestures. I looked at him and then again at Monty, and Monty followed my eyes and noticed Damien. I felt suddenly impatient, and the only thing I wanted was to leave the classroom and follow my lover wherever he would take me that day. Monty let go of my sleeve and looked away, sitting on top of a desk, leaving me space to go if I wanted, and took my books and my pencil case in a snap. Before I could leave, he spoke again. I thought you were different, Alex, but I guess I was wrong. When I met you, I didn't think for a moment that you would be interested in hanging around with someone like Damien and doing the kind of stuff he does. I thought we would be friends." I felt a lump in my throat, and unable to say a word, I started walking and left the classroom. What are we doing here, Damien? Every whisper echoed and traveled up the walls to the high ceiling of the church. Unlike at first hour of morning, when he repeated the sing-song of the prayers after the priest and the benches were still covered in shadows, the daylight poured through the colorful windows. Monty's words still rang in my ears, and I felt as if I was dirtying that scared place just by being there. Damien sat on a bench facing the asile and leaned back a little, spreading his legs. He offered me a wolfish grin and a spark of what trembled in his eyes. Come here and kneel down. What? You've heard me perfectly well. I want you on your knees. And he unbuttoned his trousers with a lazy flick of his fingers. Okay, ich muss leider ganz ehrlich sagen, nicht in der Kirche. Überall sonst, aber nicht in der Kirche. Und ich bin mir auch, glaube ich, sicher, dass wir da das schlechte Ende kriegen. Ich will es eigentlich gar nicht drücken, aber nee. Oh, das ist eine schwere, doofe Entscheidung. Das ist keine schwere Entscheidung, das ist eine doofe Entscheidung. Wenn ich jetzt click do as he says. Nee, ich nehme das andere. Don't obey him. I felt sick and turned to avoid looking at him. What's wrong? Hey, Alex, come here right now. We don't have all day. I won't. What are you saying? His voice was tingled with annoyance, but for once I didn't mind. I had disappointed Monty and Rick. I could see their eyes judging me as clearly as if I had them in front of me. I was about to disappoint my parents too, at that rate. I would fail almost all my subjects, and Oxford would be just a distant dream. I would disappoint my late uncle too. And of course, I was disappointing myself. Having that kind of relationship with someone who didn't care for me, drinking, betting money in poker, ignoring my friends, my studies, my future. What the hell was I doing? And all for what? Just for pleasure? A pleasure of the flesh that would vanish from my life in some month if Damien didn't get bored of me sooner and would leave me feeling still emptier than how I felt right then? Because I couldn't turn a blind eye anymore, and how things were, not after Damien had started loud and clear the other day in the woods when he broke up with Rachel. The only thing between us was sex. He had made it clear since the beginning, so I didn't have any reason to feel empty and sad. And yet, precisely in a place like that, where I was standing under the colored glass that filtered the light and turned it into a rainbow of greens, yellows, and purples, I decided I couldn't continue to be Damien's puppet. I had to cut the strings right then, or I would turn into a broken and forgotten doll. I said that I won't do it. I won't do your bidding anymore. Damien stood up and grabbed my forearm, forcing me to turn and look at him. The hell you're saying? Have you forgotten? I can go to the head teacher's office and tell him a couple of things. Now get down on your knees, or you will be sent home in disgrace by tomorrow morning. Go on. I prefer to be expelled than keep being your sex slave. Disbelief spread through his features. He placed both hands on my shoulders and shook me hard. What's wrong with you? Things are not like that. I shoved him off and stepped back. They are for me. I just follow you around like a pet and I'm sick of it. So thank you for your help, but enough is enough. Alex! I turned on my heels and ran away from him. My eyes started to prickle, but I just clenched my teeth and kept running. From the next day on, I glued myself to my other two roommates. I could feel their eyes studying me, puzzled, and the confused look they exchanged when they thought I wasn't paying attention, but they didn't make any questions about my sudden change. I thought I should apologize for my behavior during the past weeks, but it was difficult to find the right words. And, of course, I couldn't explain to them what exactly had happened between Damien and me. I would die of embarrassment if I tried. But they just accepted me back, Monty with his usual cheerful grins and kind jokes, and Rick with his quiet mood and rare smiles. They really were too good for me. It made me still feel more self-depressing and I already was. Then I already was. The first days I didn't dare to look Damien in the eye when he sat with us for meals, and I was surprised to see him joining us also in the library. He had barely stepped there since the school started after all, so I wondered if he was doing it only to make me feel still more uncomfortable. On the bright side, after those first couple of days, the worry and expectation that the head teacher would call for me passed, and I started to relax. Perhaps Damien was waiting until I let my guard down to give me a harder blow, but he wasn't so cruel, was he? Who could know for sure? It surely depended on how angry he was with me. The other option was that it had all been a bluff and he wouldn't go to the head teacher's knowing he would be punished as well, even if he was sure he wasn't going to be expelled. I betted for that option and tried to endure Damien's presence by our side the whole day.